It's time for your Talk Time Live exclusive.
You are now about to witness the strength of geek knowledge.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a special edition of Select Start. I am your host, Xavier Josiah. For quite some time, I have been talking about my disdain and distrust for the business practices of the gaming industry over the course of the last few years. I mean, dating back to the iOS and the mobile days. So for this episode, I invited Professor Antwon Foreman to the show, who teaches entrepreneurship and management at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, to talk about these strategies and tactics that you may need to be aware of. So, first of all, welcome, Professor Foreman. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming, man. I've been waiting to talk to somebody who may be a little bit more immersed in what's going on for quite some time. And, I've talked to people in the gaming industry, but it's like they can talk about it, but they can't talk about it. So you're kind of in that loop of like, okay, you can talk about it a bit because, it's not infringing on things per se. This is not a conflict of interest of any kind, I guess. But, I've been, I'm a big gaming forever, and we got a lot of gamers, especially in the A.C.M.G Facebook group. But lately, I've been noticing this. I don't know if this is my marketing promotional spidey sense, if you will, but I've just been noticing these things, and it might be because of what I do on outside of the realm of A.C.M.G. But these business practices are just insane. Like these methods to bring in more money to their helm. So, like for years, we've witnessed this in the gaming industry, looking for new ways to profit off of their games that they make. While some game companies provide methods to add more replay value to it, in quality, like adding expansion packs or even DLCs, which I find is okay. You do have some companies who develop systems like microtransactions, loot crate systems, in-app purchases, and even now promotional ads to bring in more money. My question to you is, what do you make of all this?
It's definitely a strategy to, increase revenue, right? Mm-hmm. And I think when you think about any business at all, not even just gaming companies, the mastery and the art is, hey, I want to get the most money for the least amount of effort.
Truth be told.
And anyone who knows the art of game design, right, knows how many hours and years it takes to build the infrastructure of that game.
Yep.
So if the art and dynamic of business is, most money, least effort, the easiest way to do that is not to create a whole entire game.
Right.
But to entice you with a new character, a new way to be competitive, right?
Right. And
a new way to grow within that game, so I can change a couple lines of code and get another $50, $60 out of you.
Which in some cases, depending on how they do it, to me is fine. I don't mind if it really makes it worth its while. If they add on something that really brings a impact in my experience, that's fine. But there's just some things that they do that I find unethical. Yeah. And rightfully so. And that was just one of those things. But, in terms of that, what do you like? Do you like the process that they're doing?
I don't, in all honesty. Like, I grew up playing games. I still play mobile games now, periodically, right?
Yeah.
But for me personally, like you said, eventually the more you learn about business, the more you almost get that business spidey sense.
Yeah.
And you can realize when things are being used against you, right?
Yeah.
And I honestly think in most of these games that these companies are using gamers' competitive nature against them.
Yeah.
Right? And like you said, eventually it turns into you're exploiting.
Right.
Not really adding to the context of the game. You're not really adding anything to it. And I think what most people don't look at is how much money over time they're spending on it. Where when I was younger, if you paid $40, $50, you had a whole brand new game, right?
Yeah.
And now people are paying $40, $50, $60, $100 a month.
Minimum 60 for a brand new, maybe AAA game, and then like if they have a deluxe version, is no more than 100. If they have a little bit of an incentive after that, like a figure or something like that, it's 150 or something. So I mean, there's some cases I feel like, okay, Bet. I understand this. This makes sense. This is a little bit above and beyond to get the dollar.
Mhm.
I respect this. In-app purchases, loot crates, microtransactions, all this stuff. That's when it's becoming more like a casino to me.
It is. And I think they know it. And I think I was looking at an article one time that was talking about gamers and gamblers, right?
Yeah.
Some people don't think about how much those two industries mesh together.
Yeah.
And I think the industries have figured that out. I think that's where the loot crates and all of those things, where you have a small percentage of really getting what you want,
Yeah.
and paying that fee comes in, right? And I think it is unethical. I think it's unethical, but I also think consumers have to realize the power of being a consumer.
Yes.
And if people would stop buying it, it would make them retract from those strategies.
Yeah. And that goes for, like you said before, that goes for not just the gaming community. That goes for any brand or business that is trying to do this. And you have the power. And that's the thing. We have the power to do so much. I'm going to slip in voting as well. But, we have the power to make change. It's just a lot of those who try to defend it are those who are too lazy to want to do it. And that a lot of times is the target audience to me, is they rely on the people who are not going to put in that effort.
It's when I talk to seminars about it, I talk about it all the time, right? And it's very similar to like having a kid, right? If you keep rewarding a child for a bad thing, they're definitely going to keep doing it, right? And we're rewarding them through paying for bad practices.
Yeah.
Right, and steadily getting worse. And I think, like I said, I think they know about the competitive nature, the addiction to escapism, and the dynamic of wanting accomplishment.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a lot when I talk to my students.
Yeah,
where I think in some cases we substitute life accomplishments, right, in games at times, and they know that it's been proven. Like there's research to prove this. Yeah, you're going to spend that extra money because you want that feeling, that feeling that I finally achieved it. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I wish consumers didn't allow that to actually dictate how they purchase things. Right. Because it's only going to get worse if they don't watch it.
Do you think that they really, and I know, I actually probably know this answer already, but do you believe that like they really, because I think they, especially PlayStation, because I recently seen like last year's E3 when they were talking about the process of the PlayStation 5 and how they were trying to dwell into the psychological mindset for the game experience. And you can only do that if you have experienced people behind you. So, I mean, they have psychologists that are working by them to understand. And I make this mention all the time. There's always some really crazy tactics that these multi-million-dollar companies do. They got psychologists to look at, how our mindset, how our ideology, how are we going to react socially, towards certain things and certain aspects. So in their minds, they're saying like and in reality, they will not react to this the way that it's funny. My wife and I own a Peloton, and we are also in Facebook groups for Peloton. And I realized something came about that I realized, through the corner of my eye that I realized, and that is there are members in the group that work for Peloton. Yeah. I'm in two of them. You got the main one, and then you got your local ones, your local tribe ones. And there are planted people of Peloton in there. So my wife uses the Peloton, to bike, but also uses for other exercises. And she uses the screen to use, to use other exercises like stretching or cardio, whatever like that, instead of using the screen. Now I'm looking at it and I see this commercial for the new Peloton Plus, which answers all of the questions that she just did. And I'm like, and I told my wife, I'm like, how they came up with this, right? All of those plants inside the Facebook group that listens, observe every bit of talking, got all the information. Boom, we got a new Peloton with the screen that now pulls out so it could be easier for you to look at. It's as simple as that, man.
It's smart business, though.
It is.
That's the thing about it. Like, if their community is being built around your product, right? Let's take A.C.M.G, right? It grows, and I
don't think there's somebody in from comicbook.com or IGN or somebody in there. There's sometimes and I hate to like boost my own self, but like there are times when I talk about something on my podcast that ends up somewhere else later on. I'm like, what the hell is going on here?
Even if let's say A.C.M.G got to 3 million
Yeah.
followers, right?
God forbid.
You were shipping 3 million, right? Let's be real, Dax. You're going to hire someone to watch that page.
That is true.
Right? You're going to hire someone to help you build content and be like, I need to know what they want to hear. You see what I'm saying? And that's exactly what these companies are doing.
By the way, if anybody out there in the A.C.M.G Facebook group who is qualified for that, please, seek me, DM me, whatever.
I mean, it's smart business in a way, right? I think,
and don't get me wrong, I have no problem with that tactic in a sense because there's nothing really unethical about that portion.
Yeah,
it's the other things.
That's what I was about to say. I can't knock that, right?
Yeah, I'm not knocking that at all.
But I think when you start using it to manipulate, and I think the other thing is
right there
when it turns into people have to understand how pricing works, right?
Yeah.
If you're trying to make the most off the least amount of effort, right? Mm-hmm. Part of that is figuring out how much exactly are they willing to pay.
Yeah.
Right? And they're going to keep creeping that price up.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Until there's a breaking point.
Right.
And in the gaming industry, even in social media and technology, we can use Apple, for example.
Yeah.
It's the only industry I've ever seen that we have not reached a breaking point yet.
No. Apple is just...
They take it more and more away.
I am like one PC away from just being Apple. Like, I cannot. I'm a PC guy from in terms of like making my own stuff or building my own equipment so I could do what I do. But iPad, Apple Watch, iPhone, my wife with a MacBook. I mean, for a reason. They earned their right because their quality is that good. But to their credit, they don't go to these tactics either, and that's what I really respect about them.
They haven't yet.
Yet, I should say, yes.
I think the next phone they're talking about taking away quite a few what we would consider regular necessities out of the box.
Hey, as long as I can still call my camera in case I get stopped by the cops, I'm fine. None of that stuff matters. Just say like, "Hey, I'm being stopped by the cops." Boom. Can I get that? I need that.
And I think that's the thing. Even with the tech, the gaming, like I said before, one game I play periodically is Marvel Future Fight.
The one game I do stay away from.
It wasn't as bad at a point, but it's gotten worse recently.
All mobile games, though, it's like I used to be really into the mobile game industry, and I was fascinated that I could play this on my phone. I love this idea, and especially all of these new indie developers that were coming up with these retro games and everything. I'll give you an example. A company, I don't know if they're still around because I've refused to mess with them, called Gameville or Game Evil. As how it's worded. And there's a reason why it's called that, because they make these elaborately beautiful retro-looking games, but you'll end up spending a mountain of cash. And then you have all this, you earn all this point, and then your memory gets lost, and you can't get it back, and you got to start all over again. And I started realizing this pattern more and more. I'm like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah. I mean, I think now, the way they're launching characters, they have Marvel Future Fight, a new tier 3 system, right?
Yeah.
And at the rate they're launching tier 3s, unless you're spending money, and heavy money, there's no way to get the materials needed for the next character, right?
So Candy Crush tactic.
It's a huge tactic, and I always jokingly say, of course, there's whales in every every game in general, right? Mm-hmm. But can y'all make a position for sharks or something like?
How about that?
Where it's not just simply once that new thing pops out that I'm just completely not competitive anymore unless I grab that thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it becomes unethical, especially, like I said, when it comes to the rates being so low. And I do think, and it's a great thing, that in Marvel Future Fight, individuals like Cynic Alex are fighting against it a little bit and telling people, hey, this is getting outrageous. Don't buy this or X, Y, and Z.
The more noise that is being made, the more they'll start to listen.
Yeah, and I think the more, and that's what I've seen happen, and I think that's a perfect example of it happening, is it was really bad for a few months, and then a lot of the influencers, a lot of the gamers stopped purchasing. Yeah. There were in-app purchases that were saying, hey, if this amount of people buy it, then we'll discount things that amount. Yeah. And it was funny because from a marketing standpoint, you just publicized how many of your whales stopped buying. Yeah. Because it wasn't even close to where you'd get the maximum amount of discount.
Yeah.
And slowly they started retreating from those tactics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's proof that if consumers become conscious, in a way, we can direct the gaming industry.
When you do that math.
It's crazy. I know one person told me one time, he's like, yeah, I spend $60 a month on this one mobile game. And I paused and said, do you realize it's $720 a year on one game?
You know how many, we talked about this like before, hey, I'm like, you know how many freaking games you could get for that much? And you're spending on a one? Do you know how many great games that are out right now that are not doing the same thing that you could get? You know?
And I think that control over also the media, where those independent companies getting the same bandwidth in a way, and push the same way, that people think these are the only options. You know what I mean? And I think that's where the influencer communities and everything else can come in handy. Yeah. Pushing the fact that, hey, you know, you don't have to buy this to be able to, you know, get the pleasure that we all get from gaming.
Right. Yeah. So the gaming industry this year alone is going to earn up to $1.59 billion. Let me repeat that again. The gaming industry, for those who didn't hear properly, the gaming industry will earn up to $1.59 billion in revenue. In your opinion and your perspective, is this a matter of need or greed? I mean, in terms of like, could they actually make this amount without doing the tactics that they're doing?
I feel like it will be harder for them to do so, right? But I also feel like as a culture, especially American culture, we're spending more and more on indulgences. And the more we spend on it, the more it's naturally going to grow like that. You're seeing the same kind of spikes in the hospitality industry, right? Luxury foods. I think the gaming industry could hit that level of revenue, but I feel like they'd have to really maximize their programmers and stuff like that. And that's a question of if they want to do that. I think another huge problem that happens is a lot of these gaming companies are trying to go public. They're trying to go in the stock market. You see what I'm saying? Right. And they're trying to grow in that direction. But people don't realize that once you form a corporation, the buy-in, right, the care, the emphasis is no longer on the customer. It's on the stakeholder.
Right, exactly.
And I have to keep getting that stakeholder money every single year.
That's it's funny you said that too, because you know, as a wrestling fan myself, I follow kind of the background business of what WWE has done, and I realized that they always have this stakeholders meeting every year that they have to figure out the percentage. Now, granted, this company, despite the pandemic and everything, is still making a ton of money due to the fact that they have major deals with Fox, multi-million-dollar deals with Fox, and other assets, but not from revenue from customers. So they can kind of get away with that, but other people can't. So I can see where they would have to do that. But also, what about? I mean, we're talking about the United States. I mean, we haven't even talked about like other countries that are really, really going hard on these. Like I think I went on a Facebook group. I was on a Facebook group once that talked about this very same subject. How much money are you putting into these MOBA games and stuff like that? And most of them from the Vietnamese gamers out there, oh God, they're spending a tank of money in this. And I'm like, have y'all ever heard of game consoles? What is going on here? Like, there's a lot of, I really, and you know, what is the game? I forgot the game that everybody's playing right now, mostly over there, especially is a MOBA game, multi-online battle arena game that everybody's playing, and it's a big competition for it or whatever. But I was astounded by how much people are really investing in this mobile thing. And I'm like, I hate playing online. And I'll tell you why, because it's the most unstable thing in the world. I mean, you see how we were trying to get this thing running. It is the most unstable thing in the world, and if anything happens, you're done. If you're fully relying, this is why I had this discussion, this debate over like whether using, you know, Adobe, you know, Creative Suite 6 as opposed to using the Creative Cloud, which is online reliant. And if anything ever happens to it, then you know it's, you know, you're done. You know, you have no way of being able to continue. So, I mean, I don't like relying on Avengers right now is going through so many bugs right now that they're, everybody's believing that that game is as good as it was, as good as the experience was with the story mode, that is coming in unfinished. And now, like, it's to a point where, do we need to rely on this? When we had Spider-Man PS4, no real online reliance to it, just a few downloads. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 was fantastic. Was no need for any, like, there was a multiplayer option, but everything was just done. But there was no reliance of like buying in-app purchases or anything, or any type of, I feel like this is karma in a sense for them. But it just astounds me. Like, does this have to be the way? And do you think this is just going to get worse or better?
I think if it's not controlled by the consumer, it's going to get worse.
And I like that you said it that way.
I think it's really going to get worse. Even when you were talking, I was thinking about how in the mobile gaming system, we also have to look at how much they're paying to be on some of these platforms.
Yeah.
The 30% charge for all in-app purchases is directly passed down to the consumer, really.
Yeah.
That Apple and Google are charging companies to actually take the transactional. I'm a business owner. I've done consulting for over 10 years, helped over 300 businesses, right?
Right.
I've never seen a processing fee over 3 to 5%.
Right.
At max, the highest I've ever seen a processing fee is in the hotel industry. And sometimes they might do 5 to 8%, depending on whose flag is on the hotel.
Right.
So at an 8% processing fee, we also have to question what fees, what really debt, right, and costs are being passed down to us from the mobile companies.
Right.
And from the overarching brands that they are subject to.
It's very interesting. So what are the things that consumers in the gaming community need to be aware of when investing in these games these days?
I think on a very basic level, right? And it's something I've done and I've told my students to do all the time and my clients. If you are a gamer, set a hard budget. Do not let them control your emotions, right? Yeah. And get you so emotionally attached that you're going over budget.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Two, I think when looking at it, really look at how much they're giving you for what you're putting in.
Absolutely.
I look at everything in my life, and it might be just me being a business person and a business professor.
What's
my return on investment, right?
Thank you.
If I'm getting a dollar amount for this and a dollar amount for that, how much are you really giving back? And in games, it's also very interesting because you can push the fact that, if I did this and worked for it, right? How much time would it really take me to do this? You see what I'm saying? To accrue these materials, these resources, character, is it really worth it? Right. If it's not, say, if it's a DLC character or on a mobile game or a regular game,
right?
Unless I'm in love with the character, if it's not changing the fabric of how I play the game, do I really need it? What's my real return on it?
Right.
But I think those are the two biggest things to consider. Because I think a lot of these games have become almost a collector's dynamic.
Yeah.
Right? The top resources, these things, I almost brag about I have them. And a lot of people aren't looking at the ROI factor.
This sounds like the art of critical thinking.
It is. Isn't that life? I say all the time. Life is a game of chess, not checkers.
Thank you. Well said.
So it's the individuals who treat life like checkers.
Yeah.
That honestly these companies use.
Yeah. I agree. We touched on something last night that when we were just talking, offhand. But I'll ask you this now because what you said was really awesome. Hopefully you remember what you said. But what exactly do you believe is their target audience in this case when it comes to, using these we talked about the psychology factor of it. So there has to be a target audience there and a target audience that is actually falling for these, these in-app purchases and these loot crate systems and just, diving away. And you reflected on something in a matter of how a person lives in life in a sense. Can you talk about that? Elaborate on that?
I think it goes back to that point of being addicted to escapism, right?
Yes.
A lot of times that we are living a life where we don't feel that accomplishment, where we're not happy sometimes. Let's be real, right?
Look, I do the things I do, but I got my days sometimes.
Like, you live a life, you're going to work, everything else. That, the video game, the anime, the movie, right? The comics. I'm a huge
A.C.M.G. is escapism.
Yeah, it's escapism.
Yeah.
And we always have to watch the escapes we become addicted to, right? I tell my clients all the time, and I say this and I repeat it, and some of them call it my mantra, right? Don't be so addicted to your escapes. You can't live a life you don't need to escape from.
Wow.
And sometimes those are really in the base form of things. That's what they're using.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And looking at how the system works, you're paying for those few moments of happiness sometimes, right?
I know sometimes I like swinging in New York like Spider-Man.
Yeah. You're paying for that de-stressor for an hour or two. You know what I mean?
Or 40.
Yeah.
Give or take.
And it's like, I think that's who they're targeting. And the more they target those individuals, that's why they target kids so early.
Yeah.
Because if you really think about it, right? Because I can get them used to when I come home from school, it's been a long day.
Yeah.
Hours on the game. And then it's a repeat. There's an alternation and repeat. But we don't realize how that's training us for the same way as school, then the game.
Yeah.
It turns into work and then the game. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And sometimes we're not living life to the fullest, and it goes back to the critical thinking factor. They're also targeting those individuals who aren't realizing.
Who don't discover their value and their power.
They're not realizing. I
tell people all the time, but they just don't want to hear it a lot of times. It's like, you really have the power to do what you say you're going to do. It's just a matter of putting in the effort to do it.
And I think that's the thing. I feel like the more we accept the convenience and the complacency, the worse this is going to get.
Yeah.
And this bleeds into a lot of other things. It bleeds into wealth gaps. It bleeds, like you said, voting dynamics. It bleeds into other larger, more complex dynamics. But it all boils down to our mentality, our focus, exercising our power.
You when you said that, I was immediately just thinking about this voter suppression situation that we're going through, that we in the Black community are going through right now, man. And it just, you know, one chain reaction to one thing can affect a whole nother thing. And if we could get through this type of situation and acknowledge this, and you know what's the crazy part about it? Is that we actually have. There are points in our time that we have said, I'm tired of this. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I want to do it. And then just forget all about that we did it. So, like, if you could do it once, you know, we could damn sure do it again. How many people voted for Obama? President Obama at the time? That was a lot of people. A lot of people than it was the second or third time around.
And it's interesting because, again, it goes back to the same mentality and system, right?
Yeah, it all connects.
And just in North Carolina, okay, they purged over 500,000 voters from the voter registration system in last week. So there's 500,000 people in the state of North Carolina who believes that they are registered to vote and will probably show up to the polls in November, and they're going to say, you're not registered. You see what I'm saying? But when we look at that in the exercise and power factor and the responsibility of having power, right? We have a responsibility of being the checks and balance, right? Yeah. And how we transfer that power. And I think that's another huge part from even just the educational standpoint. That transfer of power is huge. Yeah. We see money as, oh, how can I get what I want, right? Instead of, what am I funding? What do they care about?
What are you investing? Yeah.
Are they willing to invest in me the same way I'm willing to invest in them? Right? And that concept is an extremely core concept. Yes. When it comes to voting, purchasing, anything that exchanges that power between one person to another. Because voting is the same way. I'm exchanging the power of my voice, right? Right. To get you into a position, but are you willing to invest in me once you're in that position? In the gaming industry, is I'm giving you my money, right? Right. Because I love what you're creating, but are you creating that for me, or are you creating that to abuse me? And that's the huge question.
I really hope that people that are like listening to this or watching this right now really understands how all of this connect into, and especially in us in the Black community. If you're listening or watching it, is absolutely This is the idea. I mean, you could do the same thing for the gaming industry that you could do for other industries or other, formats or or in the political process as well. Like, this all connects, and us in our community, especially, we need to get up and show our worth and value to say, like, we want a better gaming experience. We want a better society. We want a better community. We can do this, but the word "we" keeps coming up. We. And in terms of the gaming industry, we, as in not just us in the Black community, everybody needs to step up and say, like, we don't want this. We need something better. We'll give you the money if you give us our worth right.
And we can't pass the buck. You know what I mean?
No.
And I think that's the other huge part. In community, you have COMM, COMM, and unity, right?
Right.
You have to be unified, and people have to communicate.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And it's interesting how we've lost that the more we've gained the ability to communicate.
Yeah.
You have social media, all these platforms, podcasts to hear ideas, all of these things. But we've allowed it to separate us because communication or the ingestion and the receiving of new information has become so convenient that we see interaction as an inconvenience.
Right.
Am I making sense?
Since the beginning.
And the more we have interaction as an inconvenience, the more we don't see how these practices, how these things are affecting other people. Right. Because we're not seeing their pain. We're only seeing the highlight film and the highlight reel on social media or wherever else. And that also gives other individuals that higher degree of power. Right. Because they have to interact, right? You have to interact as a business with your customer. Right. So it's almost like being in a fight, but refusing to admit you're in the ring.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Analogy right there.
This great. I love the atmosphere here.
I like that. No, you're absolutely right, man. And it's just crazy. I just hope, in some form or fashion that, this conversation can absolutely continue, because I think there's a lot of people who want to realize, want to know this, but sometimes rather want to pretentiously act like they know this and don't react to it, or, they're just not informed enough, or they just, it's the ignorance is bliss type of situation.
It is. Ignorance is bliss, and it relinquishes responsibility. Yes. And I think that's why we run from it sometimes.
Absolutely.
If we prove that we're not ignorant to it, right? Mm-hmm. That human conscience kicks in to say we have to do something about it.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So, Professor, thank you so much for being on the show. Before we actually end this off, you got any more things? You got anything else that you think that the listeners and watchers of this want to know in regards to what to look out for in the gaming community?
Like I said,
how do we demand better?
I think it's the awareness part, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's being aware and demanding what you're worth. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Right.
Despite the hype, despite anything else, make sure they're delivering what you're worth, right?
Yeah.
You can go to a gas station and knowingly get watered down gas, right?
God forbid.
You wouldn't go to the grocery store, right? Mm-hmm. And knowingly pick up a half gallon of milk that's in a full gallon carton.
Right.
And you're charged a full gallon, right? Mm-hmm. So why is we as gamers, consumers, accepting half effort or overcharging in this situation as well?
Right. Absolutely. And for God's sakes, people, do the math. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's remember, I don't know. I don't know how old you are, but when I grew up, I remember there were people who were constantly, smokers, and they were buying cigarettes throughout the year, but they never did the math of how much money that they were spending on cigarettes, on packets of cigarettes, or cartons of cigarettes. And every once in a while, you would do it, and it was like, holy crap, I spent this much. I do the same thing when it came to start online gaming. I'm talking Unreal Tournament back then, when people or the DC Universe time when they were doing monthly fees and all this stuff, and I'm like, why am I paying one fee that's equivalent to $60, per game. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, do the math.
And I think that's the art of unethical pricing. The art of unethical pricing is get you accustomed to it, right? Mm-hmm. But charge you something so little that you don't realize how much it adds up to.
Almost like leeching. Like it's just like when hackers hack into banks and they just leech a little bit off every so often, not to be noticeable, stuff like that. It's just like that. It also reminds me of the episode of Simpsons when Smithers went to go, for the Malibu Stacy, and all the kids were getting hyped for that Malibu Stacy, but it was the same Malibu Stacy but with a hat.
Yep.
That's which is hilarious. I always go by that. I love that episode. And then it's like, Lisa's the only one that's conscious about this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And Smithers is the one to mess up the whole entire thing. But she has a hat. And they all go crazy on her. I always go back to that because that's how all these industries do you. They give you the same product, but just add a little bit of a bow on top of it or whatever like that sometimes. But Professor, thank you so very much. Before we actually cut off, you got some things that's going on in your world, so I want to hear about that, and as well as everything that's going on with you. So I'll give you the format for right now.
Well, overall, like I said earlier, I've been a consultant for over 10 years now, right? I helped over 300 businesses, currently in the process of restructuring our website because we realized the need for entrepreneurship, right? Yeah. And it goes back to this gaming conversation where some people are for or against capitalistic societies, right? Yeah. But the beauty of them is supposed to be the fact that you have the power to compete and bring your dreams to reality. Absolutely. And the more we depend on corporations, the more we actually get away from that. You know what I mean? So really, we're on a mission of building more entrepreneurs, helping entrepreneurs stay in business, taking them to the next level through startup consulting, marketing, and management consulting. And really, that's what I personally do in a nutshell, right? I tell people I'm in the business of turning dreams into visions, right? And then turning visions into reality. And
you got my slogan.
And whether it's me as a professor at A&T, helping the next generation grow, or me with my personal business, I'm the chairman of a nonprofit called CARE, Citizens Advocating for Racial Equity and Equality. Nice. And right now we're actually doing a voters push, right? And working with a community development bank. I think if all of us pull all our resources together overall, and offer the gifts we have, we can make the community a better place. Right. So I challenge people, check out A&T. My website, support-u.org. It's under construction, so bear with me for right now because I'm trying to get the community development community stuff in it, right? And then the CARE website is CARE, CAREE .today. So literally it's CARE today, purposely because people don't need to push off caring tomorrow in a way. You know what I mean?
We do not this year, if this year proved anything.
So yeah, that's in a nutshell what I have going on. And like I said, sharing knowledge. Absolutely. I think the biggest thing we can ever create is learning something and not passing it on.
And not being afraid to reach out either to people. And I think that was another thing. That's been, for the last few interviews that I've done, that's been the one thing that I think that needs to be talked about more, is that not being afraid to reach out to make your life happen. And even if that means going or getting through a few no's before you get one yes.
Yeah, it's persistence. Yeah. It's huge persistence. I always say thoughts become actions, actions become habits, habits become lifestyles. Boom. Right? Yeah. And if you want a lifestyle, you got to change your thinking, right? You see what I'm saying? And
I live it.
When you're looking at those dynamics, a lot of people think entrepreneurship is a job title. Yeah. And it's a way of thinking. It's a lifestyle. It's opening your mind to different things. And I can go on and on about that piece. But
it's an adventure, and a great one at that. Even in the bad and good times, this is a great adventure. I wouldn't trade this for the world. I left my corporate office it's going on probably like 5 years now. And I've been with them for 10 years, and they wasted my entire 30s, not proving not showing me my worth. And all of a sudden I just said, screw it. I've proven myself enough to get out and do what I own. Me and my wife became entrepreneurs, and which is why we're here right now.
I mean, it's invigorating, and
especially when you have the right ideas.
a righteous man eats of his own labor, and it's something about eating off your own labor, right? That is huge to me. And I think in our current society, I won't go too deep on it, but if you look at the numbers again,
right.
If people don't realize you need a side hustle or your own business, we will be in worse problems than people think we will be.
Very true.
I've read some articles that basically are saying, millennials and Zers might need $4 to $6 million to retire. Wow. Right. And I tell my students, if you got a corporate job today and paid no taxes, you had no expenses, no rent, nothing, right, and saved the full $100,000 for your 40 years of employment, you still be only at $4 million.
Right.
So we have to invest. We have to build our own. You know what I mean?
I learned that in sociology ages ago, man. Especially when it came to like having a kid and how much that's going to cost and all that stuff. And that math. And that was like what, in 2009 or whatever like that. So I know it grew exponentially now to a astronomical price to have a kid till the age of 18. It is just, and shout out to all the parents out there.
Yes.
But
I respect every last one of you.
Yes. God bless you all. Professor Foreman, thank you so much, man. It's been an honor to have you on here, and hopefully I can have you back on again to talk about some other business ventures in the world of anime, comics, movies, and games as well.
Anytime.
Folks, thank you for this very special episode of Select Start. Hopefully you were more educated now, and hopefully you'll make more decisions and better decisions in your gaming ventures. On behalf of myself and Professor Foreman, all I gotta say is learn to let go, live life, and love all things anime, comics, movies, and games. This is A.C.M.G. presents Talk Time Live. We are out of here. Take care.